decades in this business, one of the things that I admire the most are the people who can keep the ball in the air over extended periods of time, but also make a radical shift in their work. Too many photographers have some early success and they can't break away from that early success, from those images that were favorably received, and go back to that process of reaching down inside to find new imagery. And I think one of the extraordinary things about this project is that's exactly what David J. has done. After 20 years as a fashion photography, it's a tough world. It's not always a friendly world, but if you have a 20-year career, you've figured out a way to keep defining the trends and the talent in fashion and doing it in a fresh way. The great Alexei Brodovich, the great photo editor of Harper's Bazaar, his quote was, "Surprise me." And that's what fashion photographers are expected to do year after year after year, is something new, something different. But it is a kind of a closed world. It's a world of just a few editors and a few designers and up-and-coming models. And it was a personal story. It was a personal friendship that brought David out of that particular world, of course, using the talents that he had honed over 20 years, to this project, the SCAR project, which stands for Surviving Cancer, Absolute Reality. And one of the things that was probably the hardest thing to do is to shift from a field where he was doing a shoot and you'd have, what, 10, 15 people in the room, where you've got a photo editor and a makeup person and a costume person and a, agent, and, to a tighter environment, still working in a studio, but trying to work with a smaller group and really keep the focus not on what they're wearing, because in many cases they're not wearing much, but to really look at the people sitting in front of him and to try to engage with them and to provoke out of that engagement something that the rest of us could respond to. And I think he's done that quite extraordinarily. I would go on to say before the movie starts is that the other thing is I admire is that he's moved from the photographing the 18 to 36-year-old women that the project started with, to photographing men with breast cancer. Then he did a project called the Alabama Project, Civil Rights of Healthcare, and now he's on to something that some of you may know I'm intimately aware of, which is the soldiers that, because of a 10-year project that I did on war photography, he's photographing the soldiers that come back from war with quite extraordinary and horrific images. And in fact, I have just asked him if I could acquire one of those images of the soldiers, because I think I've looked at over 1 million images. I think that he's dealt quite extraordinarily with the reality of these men and women's lives. So, David, why don't you come forward?
Very gracious introduction. I'm very comfortable behind the camera, but terrified standing in front of an audience like this. So I'm going to say very little, in fact, nothing, primarily because I think it's much more interesting to watch the film. It gives you most of the SCAR project story. And afterwards, we'll do a bit of a Q&A. And I think it'll be more interesting to discuss these things after you've seen the film. I do hope you'll all come and look at exhibition itself. The images have evolved quite a bit since this was done a few years ago. And enjoy the show. And thank you all so much for